Hello people of the Gamerverse, Analyzation Skull here, bringing you a Arkham Knight video. Today I'm going to be attempting a trophy, or showing you a trophy get, of the one named the Curtain Calls, and this one is attainable by downloading Challenge Map Pack number 6, I believe it is, and the requirements for it are to do a flawless free flow in every round of the challenge map with 4 different characters: Nightwing, Robin, Catwoman, and Batman. And I will be performing the get of this trophy, or the acquisition of it, for each of these characters for you today, starting off with Nightwing. And in every round, what makes this difficult is that you cannot get hurt, because it would interrupt your free flow in the first place, which you cannot. It would disable you from getting the trophy, because then you would be hurt and then you wouldn't have access to it anyway. So this just adds to the challenge, and what we have here is a slightly more advanced set of enemies that they're giving you. Not at this moment. At this moment they're fairly easy enough, just your standard amount of enemies. One of them in one round has a weapon. They're actually, now that I'm looking at it, they're a slightly more advanced grouping of enemies. Uh, in the first round, it's just your standard bunch of enemies. In the second round, it's going to be a healer enemy, or a medical enemy, that's going around healing enemies and stopping you from attaining the trophy you need, trying to keep as many opponents up, trying to hurt you as possible, which you do not need. Another one is the enemies in the suits. I forget what they are named, but they can grab an enemy from the floor that you've knocked out already and immediately resurrect him. They don't revive as often as the medics do, because it's not technically their job, but when they do decide to revive an opponent, they do it instantaneously, which instantly creates another enemy for you, another problem to worry about, which gets in the way of your completion of these challenge maps. And that's going to be the second round. The third round has these exact same enemies, plus just your standard normal enemies, and add to that 2 enemies which have the electronic taser weapon, that will attempt to hurt you, that you can only avoid at some points, that you can't counter attacks from, which makes it even more difficult. Nothing too special besides that on the third round, but the fourth round is where it gets extremely challenging. As you can see right now, you are fighting big enemies, and unless you counter their moves, these are the majors of the Arkham Knight game. I forget what exactly they're called, but the majors from Destiny are the only thing that they're comparable to in my brain at the moment, so you'll have to forgive me. But you're either going to face 4 of them, or an even larger staggering amount of enemies that are going to have shields to make up for their absence, depending on which character you're doing. Nightwing has 4 of the giant major enemies, as does Batman. Robin only has 2, but they're made up for it by an additional placement of shield-carrying enemies. And Catwoman doesn't have any of the major enemies, but she does have even more of an amount of shield-carrying enemies, which begins to be a huge, tedious problem. You'll see that later in this video. But that about does it for enemy composition, and it may not look it at first. I'm attempting to go through this as swiftly as possible, and it may not look like it, because what you're seeing right now is the final results of I would say an hour and a half of attempts on these different challenge maps, messing up at different intervals, but everything has to go perfectly. It all has to go fluidly without any mess up. Again, the requirements for the trophy are a flawless, meaning you cannot get hurt, the free flow can't be interrupted, flawless free flow, and it has to be done completely. So that about sums it up for the requirements of it. And as you can see, I just finished Nightwing. On to the next character. That ought to be interesting. I'm just gonna take a minute here to evaluate the score, and I'll explain more once we get to that second character, which will be Catwoman, I believe. Either Catwoman or Robin. Now we are continuing with Robin, and something I want to bring up here is that also adds to or it could lessen or add to the difficulty of these challenge maps, depending on what you are used to and which character you're using most often. Odds are you're going to be using Batman the most, but as for the side characters, most people can either get used to one and can't get a grip on another, for good reason, through actual valid reasoning, because they run on opposite skill sets. Robin, for instance, bases his attacks on a slow response through calculation. So he's going to be handled a lot slower than a character like Nightwing would be handled. Nightwing, if you couldn't tell, is a lot of a speedier character to handle. He's going to be the way you master his combat style is by constantly going fast and not taking a break between free flow encounters. The way you're going to master Robin is quite literally the exact opposite. You're going to have to slowly evaluate each enemy situation when they are surrounding you. You can't go too fast because his movesets literally won't allow you to do so. You have to sit there, analyze each enemy that's approaching you one by one, and make sure you give them the correct response. If it's a tasering enemy, either grapple him or jump over him and hit him in the back, as I do just now. If it's an enemy that's coming after you with a charge attack that you can't counter, mind you, you either avoid it or jump over him for a counter, which will send him flying across the other side of the room. If it's just your standard enemy that you can counter, watch for the counter symbols and make sure you hit them all. You're going to want to counter every single thing they could possibly do to you. If it's a giant enemy like that, wait for his counter move, which requires a precisionally timed 4 counter maneuver. You have to hold back on the directional button, the left analog stick, and press the counter button 4 times sequentially, depending on how fast he's moving at the time. And if you get that exactly right, you can not only avoid his attack, but you can counter him to death, which is what I plan on doing throughout this side mission, or this challenge map, because you have to take them out as soon as possible. If you're in the 4th round, strategically, they need to be removed as soon as possible, because they have the advantage of taking advantage of you while you're in a crowd of enemies that are all surrounding you, that you have to be able to respond to at any given time. But not only that, but they don't abide to the same rules as everyone else around them does. They won't take breaks in between their movesets just to allow you to counter another enemy. They are separate from each encounter that you have. They, no matter what kind of activity you're engaged with or what combat scenario you're engaging other enemies in at that moment, they have the freedom and the power to hit you out of that combat situation. They're in their own separate I don't want to say hitbox, but they're in their own separate rate of attack. They're in their own separate attack pattern. I guess that's the phrasing I'm looking for. But they're outside of the spectrum. They have the ability to hurt you anytime they want, which is why, point being that they have to be eliminated as quickly as possible, which you can see me doing here. And again, Robin is going a little bit slower than Nightwing because the entirety of what he's based on is a slow sequential response to attacks, which have to be not taken lightly in this instance, because you have to time everything properly. It all is run on timing and perfect free flow. Again, perfect and uninterrupted free flow. And this is where I do it successfully, taking out that medic. Which reminds me, I'm going to get to on the next character, which is going to be Catwoman. I'm going to talk a little bit about why these shield enemies are so important to deal with, and why you need to respond adequately to that, and why recovery enemies are going to become a serious problem. Okay guys, we are starting on Catwoman now. 2 out of the 4 have been done, and it only gets harder from here, because Catwoman has a few advantages and disadvantages to her, and I will talk about those in a second. Right now I want to talk about what I was going to mention before, which was the shield enemies that become a problem, because during the final round, the fourth round of each of these combat encounters, there's going to be quite a few shield enemies, more or less, depending on which character you're using. Way more for Catwoman, a lot less if it's Batman or Nightwing, because they make up for that with the replacement of the giant enemies, as I stated before. But they become a problem, shield enemies, because they can constantly pick up their shield. Even if you take out the person who is carrying the shield, these enemies do not have the advantage that Batman has of having a takedown available where you can disable a weapon from a battle permanently. You have to deal with that weapon being in play or in game the entirety of the round, which means that no matter how many enemies you take out, if there is a certain amount of shields on the floor that have been dropped by other enemies, they still have the freedom to go and pick it up, regardless of who's been killed or who's been knocked out, I should say. So there can literally be, you can see an enemy standing next to a shield and think that you can attack him, and within the time that you get from one area to the next to lunge at him for an attack, he can pick up that shield, block your attack, and ruin your free flow completely, and make all of your efforts meaningless up until that point, because then you don't have the flawless free flow, and you won't have acquired the trophy, and it all becomes useless and terrible. And that is why that enemy can get extremely tedious and annoying. One of the most, hands down, the most irritating enemy out of this entire trophy get had to be the shield enemies. Not even the big guys, because the big guys, after a while, I definitely got down how to take them out quickly and how to efficiently remove them from battle. But the shield enemies never go away, and except for in the case of Batman, that you can make them go away in the case of Batman because he has that disarming technique, which I'll talk about later. But they make up for that. Oh boy, do they make up for that. Anyways, another enemy that's tediously frustrating in here that you want to watch out for are the medics, the medics and the guys in the suits. They're frustrating on their own because they have more advanced attack patterns. Well, the guys in the suits do anyway, not the medics. But anyone who can revive another player is frustrating for obvious reasons, because there are enemies everywhere, and the more you take out, the more bodies are available for medics to pick up. And if you leave a medic unattended, he will run to the nearest dead body or the nearest knocked out body to revive that person, and once he's revived, which only takes a matter of seconds, he will immediately run to another enemy to revive him, and he won't stop this pattern. He'll just keep running to more and more enemies to keep reviving them, and not let you eliminate anything. He's erasing your progress. He is the bane of your existence, basically. The bane of my existence when completing this challenge, because he continues to revive enemies, and it just gets extremely frustrating when all these enemies that you have put down are getting revived repeatedly. And not only that, but say you do take out a medic, there's more than one present at a time. It's not like they only give you one medic, and if you take out the medic, all your problems are solved. If you take out one medic, and the other medic is left alive, and he's across the map, and there's other enemies occupying your time and grasping your attention at the moment, there is nothing you can do about that medic that's still alive running over to the medic you just downed and reviving him, which then allows for twice as many revives to be made by the medics. It's a vicious cycle of you putting down enemies and them going to revive them. This will allow you to get a higher combo, sure, but when you're attempting to acquisition this trophy, all they do is get in the way, and it is just an awful feeling when you put down so many enemies and they continue to revive them, which is it's just terrible. Just an awful feeling, which is why it's such a good feeling when you've finally completed this challenge for any of these characters. All of these felt glorifying upon completion. The difficulty of it makes it that much more satisfying, which is why I chose to make a video on it for you people, you proud viewers of the Gamerverse. Anyway, on to the next and last character, Batman. I'm going to talk a little bit more about gameplay mechanics there, and alright, now we are on the finale character, the very last one, the one I saved for last, because he is the head honcho, the big kahuna, the one everybody loves, the main character of the game, Batman, and he for this challenge, as I have stated before, is the easiest to deal with in one respect, but the hardest to deal with in another, because he has the ability to remove weaponry and disable it from enemies and remove it from the playing field permanently by destroying it. If they're wielding a knife, you can use the disarm takedown, I believe it's called, and you can disarm the knife or the shield or the gun or the baton, the electric baton, any weapon that they are using that is out of the usual practice of enemies around you. You can disarm if you have saved up a combo and you have that combo unlocked. These electric baton guys, for instance, they all, it can be removed. But the people who created this challenge map, this Monarch Theater, this hell of a map, have obviously caught on to this and realized that it's a loophole in the game and it's something that can be taken advantage of by players. So what do they do to remedy this problem? They don't make it so that you can't do this. They don't disable the ability. They let you have that upgrade. Sure, keep your advantage. But what they do take away from you is, or not take away, but what I should say, what they add to the playing field is that the enemies are twice as aggressive as they normally would be for any other character that you're playing on this challenge map with. Catwoman, Robin, Nightwing, any other character that's available, the enemies are not as aggressive as they are when you are playing as Batman. These enemies can attack twice as fast. If you're in the middle of an attack, they can interrupt you with an uncounterable attack. If you attack an enemy expecting to be fast enough to outrun a counter that you are supposed to be paying attention to, which is strategically part of the game, that's what you're supposed to do in certain scenarios, you cannot do that here, and you're able to do it on every other character for this challenge map, and in literally every other game scenario in the game, except for this scenario, because they had to make it harder for Batman, because he has this advantage of removing weaponry from the game, which is why I will remove the shields from these enemies when I get the opportunity. Catwoman, in similar fashion, works just like any other character, but she is slower in the fact that, or in the respect that when free-flowing from one enemy to the next, it takes a lot longer for her to jump across the map. With any other character, it happens instantaneously, which is standard at this point. But that about does it for explanation of game mechanics and all you have to get used to for this, and why it's such a difficult challenge. But I'm happy to have completed it. Like I said before, it felt glorious. It was an astounding achievement, or trophy that I had gotten for the PS4. It's called the Curtain Falls trophy, and you have to complete this Monarch Theater with flawless free flows on every single round with all 4 of these characters. Extremely difficult. I'm extremely proud that I was able to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you like it. Like, comment, subscribe. Watch videos on this channel. Please follow and check me out if you want to as well. I have my own separate channel, Analyzation Skull, that I will plug in the end. But anyways, that about wraps it up. I hope you guys enjoyed the content, and have a good one. I will see all of you Gamerverse viewers and you dwellers of the internet in the future. Take it easy.